Okay, so I've got the main screen of Procare open right now. There are a few things that I need to do in version 10 to get ready so that I can convert my data. So I've got it all installed, and the very first time I'm signing in, I'm going to sign in with the username admin, A-D-M-I-N, and then I'm going to click on or tab down to the password. So this is the very first time I'm signing in. In that case, my password is the same as my username, so it's also admin, A-D-M-I-N. And then I can tap enter on the keyboard or click the login button, and it's going to immediately prompt me to select a new password. It's telling me that my password has either been reset or expired, and I'm going to need to pick a new one. So I'm going to say OK. It's going to ask me for my current password, which happens to be admin, A-D-M-I-N. So this would be the same for you the very first time. And then I need to pick a new password that meets these criteria. So it's got to be 7 characters long and has at least 1 letter and number. So I'm going to make something up here. All right, I'm going to tab down to the next line and repeat it. So I have a new password set up that only I know, and my password's been changed. And you'll see that I am now logged in as what's called the default system administrator, and I'm assigned to the highest user group level, system supervisor, which means that I can do everything that I need to do. Okay, a couple other things I need to do to get ready for the conversion. One is I need to establish the names of my locations, particularly if I have more than one location that I'm going to be converting. I need to get that set up first. That's done from the configuration menu at the top. We'll go to the system settings, and under locations and users, the very first category, we're going to double click on regions and schools. We'll double click here. By default, we'll have a single region set up called My Region. Most people just have one. This is kind of your geographic area, and if you wanted to change the name of that, you can come down here to the edit button. You know, maybe you'd want to call that Southern Oregon, in my case, since we're in Medford, Oregon. Or you can just leave it called My Region. We'll say exit. I've got a new region name set up now. Then I need to establish the locations I'm managing within that region. I'll click the little plus sign here. And by default, I've got 2 set up, just called My School and My School 2. So you would normally change these to the actual names of your locations. You click once, come down here to the edit button. Maybe I'd call this one Little Red Schoolhouse. Little Red Schoolhouse number 1, for example. Save and exit, and then I would probably call that one Little Red Schoolhouse number 2, for example. So if you have more than one location, if you have more than what's listed here, click the Add School button down at the bottom. You can add additional ones. Okay, so this is important to have these set up so that we can choose which one we're going to convert to. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and exit that. So now that I have the names of my school set up, I'm going to exit once more. There's another preparation thing I need to do. That is to assign the licenses to my different locations. And that's like a license for the different modules, like family data, family accounting, which locations are going to use which. That is also done from the configuration menu, and that is through the license screen. You'll notice when I first come in here, it tells me how many modules I have available. Usually this will say like 1 or 2 or 3, depending on how many licenses you have purchased. In my case, because it's a demo, it says 99. And then you pick the location, and are you a mini Procare user or a full Procare license? Okay, I'm going to be a full license. And then I'm going to mark off the modules: family data, family accounting, agency accounting. And in your Getting Started guide, your book, it'll explain what the different abbreviations mean if it's not clear. And then I'm going to go ahead and just assign those as well to my second location. So in my case, I'm using all the modules at each location. And then I'll go ahead and save that. And then I also probably want to register right now. I'm going to click Register. I usually want to register online. That'll make sure that my database is registered with Procare. Great. So I've got those basic things set up. Okay. Now we're just about ready to get into the conversion process. But there are a couple of other things depending on what modules we're going to convert. For example, if we're converting Tuition Express, we need to go set up our Tuition Express account number in order for that information to convert. That's done under Configuration, System. That's also done under Regions and Schools, where we were a moment ago. I'll double click. And that is done on a school-by-school basis. So you'll click the little plus sign, pick the school that you have a Tuition Express account number for, and then we're going to come down to the Options button here and set some options. We'll go to Options. On the left, Tuition Express is related to accounting, so it will be under the Family Accounting section. And we'd come down to the Tuition Express section, and here's where we type in our Tuition Express account number. This is a number you can get from the screens in version 9. It should also be on your documentation from version 9, but if you don't have that, give us a call and we can look up that account number for you. But you do need to have the Tuition Express account number in here in order for it to convert Tuition Express information. Now, I'm not doing that today. I don't have any Tuition Express information to convert. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that blank. Let me exit out of here. I'm going to exit once more, and we're back to the configuration settings. One other thing, if I'm converting payroll, before I can do that conversion, I need to have installed the tax tables for federal and state income tax for the conversion to be effective. So what I'll do here is I'm going to click Collapse so that I'm just looking at the main categories. And so taxes are related to accounting management. We're going to go to Accounting, and under Accounting Management, Payroll, and then under Payroll, we're going to Payroll Formulas. I'll double-click on Payroll Formulas, and you'll see I don't have anything in here for federal or for state right now. So what I'm going to do is click on Download and Update, and pick my year. I'm going to pick 2011 and just click Continue. Tells me it's going to install them, and now I have all my state and federal tax withholding categories set up. So those two specific things, putting in your Tuition Express account number or putting in the tax formulas, are only important if you're converting those modules. So let me go ahead and exit that. So now we've got all the basic things set up, and we're ready to go to version 9 and prepare our conversion file. Before I do that, though, I want to briefly take you to the website and show you the conversion chart. So you can go to, in fact, I'm going to type this in so you can see this on your screen. You could go to procaresupport.com/convert. I'm going to click Send so you can see that. And at that web address is where you can get all the information you need about converting. In fact, you'll see in today's materials list that you can download the conversion instructions from there as well. But I'm going to take you to the site and just show you for a moment. Let me bring that up here. And one moment. And I want to show you the list here. Okay, and I'm going to share this screen with you just a moment. And you should be able to see that right about now. So on the website, if you go to that URL under the frequent questions section, it'll have a link to the conversion table, or you could just search for the word conversion or conversion table. That would work as well. But what I want to point out here is that although all the high-level information converts, things like names and addresses, all your basic accounting information, all the main things, there are some things that don't convert, and there are some things that you're going to have to do after the conversion to make sure you're ready. So I just want to point some of those out. The things that have a star next to them are kind of key things that you'll want to look at after the conversion. I'm going to point out the ones that I think are the most important right now. One of those is going to be the emergency contacts. Emergency contacts are something that does not convert, so we'll talk about how to enter those after the conversion. And let me scroll down a little bit more. Immunization requirements. Now, the names of the immunizations convert, and the dates the kids receive their immunizations, that also converts, but the actual schedule of how it calculates when they're due, like it's due 24 months later and that type of thing, that does not convert. So that's one of the things that you'll want to set up after the conversion. Another thing that will be important if you have agency accounting agency accounting does convert. It is a much improved process, but it is different. So it's a good idea to find out how agencies work in V10. There's a link here to talk about that, how it's a little different, and also to talk about your conversion strategy. In some cases, you might choose not to convert agency accounting and kind of start from scratch and enter a balance forward entry. That's up to you, but it is something to think about before you do this. Okay, and then another key thing I want to point out here is under billing box, the billing boxes in version 9 are tied to the family as a whole. In version 10, they're linked to the individual children. So that's something that couldn't be converted, so that's something we'll need to set up as well, and I'm going to show you that here a little later in the broadcast. Also, authorized pickup people who can pick up the children. That information does not convert, so we'll talk about how to enter that. And the same with ID codes. We'll talk a little bit about how people now in version 10 either choose their ID code or they're going to be registering, say, with a fingerprint or something else. So that's a little different than it was in version 10. So those are the main things that I wanted to point out there. And just to make you aware that there is a conversion table available on the website. Okay, so now I want to go over to version 9. So I'm going to share version 9 with you. In fact, what I actually think I'm going to do here, let me share, I'm going to share the conversion instructions. So if you go to the web address that I pointed out, procaresupport.com/convert, or in your materials list today, there's a link to these conversion instructions which you can print in PDF format. It really is important to go through these step by step and make sure you follow the instructions. There are subtle things that you could miss, and it's important to pay attention to this. So I'm basically going to point out at the very beginning of the conversion instructions, it talks about how to prepare your data in version 9. So I'm going to point out a few of these things. One thing, it's always a good idea to make a backup in version 9 before you might remove anything or make any significant changes. So you've got that you can get back to if you want to. You have to be on the proper version. Most people are. It tells you how to check for that. And then one of the things to think about in version 9 is whether or not you really want to convert everything. A lot of times it makes sense to remove old data. Version 9 was very liberal in its ability to remove things, to delete children, to delete accounts, to delete employees, that type of thing. And because of that, if you want to get rid of some information ahead of time, it's better to do it in 9. Once you get over to 10, we have some more thorough audit trails, so the deletion process can be a little more involved. So I would say if there's anything you really don't need to take to 10, let's get rid of it while you're still in 9. So it talks about deleting old families or employees and so forth here. Let's just scroll down a little bit more. Also in version 9, you'll want to make sure that you edit the names of people. So if you have married couples, so that what happens in version 9, 2 people were often entered as the sponsor. They were entered as one name, essentially. And they will convert over as 2 people as long as the names are entered as one of these in one of these formats. So Jane and John Smith, Jane and John Smith, and so on. But that's how you'll want to have sponsor names set up, something like that, so that you get a clean data conversion. Okay, it talks about how to handle people with different last names and so forth. Just as an example, it talks about how email addresses convert and how you might want email addresses set up in version 9 ahead of time. Also talks about editing phone numbers. Phone numbers in version 9 were just really a text box, so you could type anything in there that you wanted to. In version 9, the formatting is very strict to fall into the normal setup for phone numbers. And so you'll want to make sure, here's some examples of valid phone numbers, how you can have an area code and then a word at the end. There's several different ways it can be done. As long as you've entered the information in version 9 in one of those formats, your conversion will be pretty clean. And it also talks about the importance of children having enrollment and withdrawal dates if they've left the center. This is really critical in version 10 because a child has to be actively enrolled in order for things like automatic billing to catch them, in order to show up on certain types of reports like roll call sheets. So version 9 did not necessarily require all that. Version 10, you want to make sure that you've got enrollment dates, and if the child has left, that you've entered a withdraw date. Okay, and it goes on to talk about some of the things that we need to do in version 9. Make sure our credit descriptions have an account number assigned. It's a good idea to run accounting maintenance in version 9. And then it talks about closing deposit and transaction reports, and we'll look at that in a few minutes. So you really will want to go through these instructions more carefully. I just wanted to point out some of the highlights. And now let me flip over and share with you version 9, and we'll talk about how to go through the conversion process. So let's see here. Let me change that. Yeah, you should be able to see that. And it doesn't look like you're seeing that. I'm trying to get it so I'm sharing my version 9 with you, but it doesn't appear to me that you're seeing that. Let me try to switch it to something else, and then we'll switch back. Okay, you've got it so you can see version 10. Let me try to flip back to version 9 here. There we go. So you should be able to see version 10 now. I get a little thumbnail preview of what you should be able to see, so I'm trying to make sure that you're seeing what I think you should be seeing. So I've got version 9 set up right now. And we talked a little bit about families and that type of thing. I'm going to go into family data and accounting. A couple of things I just want to show you about how I've got. I'm going to need to switch so you can share that. So we can see that. Okay, I'm in family data and accounting now. A couple of things I want to point out. One is that if I have a divorced family situation, let me go to T. I've got a family set up here, the Kathy Thomas family. You'll see how they have a sponsor and co-sponsor in version 9, and they were a single account. In version 10, that's going to convert as 2 accounts. Kathy Thomas is going to have her own account, and Fred is going to have his own separate account. So just to be aware of that. That can be particularly important if you're in a mini version of Procare where you're limited to 60 accounts. You really want to clean up and get rid of any old accounts that you don't need anymore in version 9 prior to the conversion. But just an example of that. And if I remember when we get to version 10, I'll show you how that ends up looking after the conversion. Something else I wanted to point out under the letter A there, I have Mary Anderson set up here as a parent, and she has a child, Billy. She's also an employee, so she's also in my employee data module, and I also have her set up as a user of Procare so she can log in and do things in Procare. So in version 9, I would have to have entered that person 3 different times as 3 different people. One as a user, one as an employee, and one as a parent of a child. In version 10, that person should be treated as a single person with different roles. So I'd only have Mary Anderson entered once, and I could assign her these different roles. So what we'll see after converting is that Mary actually converts 3 times because in version 9 she was 3 different people. And there's a utility that we can then use in version 10 to clean that up and get rid of the duplicates of her so that she's recognized as a single person in version 10. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start the conversion process, and I've got it set up actually so it's not going to convert, and it's going to give me a little message telling me why, and I'm going to show you the couple things that will tell us what to fix. So let me exit out of here, and I'm back now to family data. I'm back to the main screen here. I'll share that with you again. So we should be able to see the main screen of Procare. And what I'm going to do, I need to download a support file to create the export. I'm basically creating an export file from version 9, and I'm going to go import it into version 10. So I'm going to sign out of version 9. I'm going to go to the Help menu at the top, and I'm going to choose Download Procare Support File. This is all covered in the instructions. And the download file is named C for Convert, and then v10. So basically Convert v10. We're going to click Start. It'll tell me download's complete, and then I get a screen with the, and let's see, I'm going to have to share that with you. And I am going to share with you the export screen. So once I said OK to that message, there, you should see the export screen now. So I have multiple locations. It's going to ask me which one I want to export. So I've got location number 1 selected right now, location 1. And then I need to choose a destination folder. Where do I want the export file to go? So I'm going to click the little dots over here in the corner. I want to have that saved to my desktop. Pick my desktop, say OK, and that's where it's going to create a conversion file. And I'm going to click Start. And you know what? It went pretty fast, and it tells me on the very last line, Procare version 9 export failed. What failed? What do I do? Well, read on the lines right above it, because it will tell you what the problem was. So I'm going to scroll up just a little bit. Okay, and here it says Procare version 9. It tells me I need to close the current deposit report. Okay, so that's one thing. Close my deposit report. It tells me I need to close the current transaction report. Well, that's two things I need to do. And let's see, I've got another one here. Let's see, I've got a charge and credit description without an assignment called agency credit, so I'll need to look at that. And then the fourth thing I have is I have an employee who does not have a standard work department. Her name is Amy Collins. Okay, so four things that I'm going to go and take a look at. Okay, so if you follow all the steps in the printed conversions instructions to prepare your data in version 9 first, this shouldn't happen. But it's easy to overlook something, and I just want to make you aware that if it does say it failed, it will tell you right on the screen what you need to fix. You can even go to this export button here, and it'll come up in Notepad. You could print the list out if you want to. And that would, if you needed our help doing it for some reason, that would help our technicians so we'd know what we needed to look at. So let's go ahead and exit here, and we've got four things that we need to look at. Okay, so I'm going to bring up version 9 on my machine again. So what happens is version 9, it exits out of version 9 after that. And then as soon as version 9 comes up, I'm going to go into family data, and then I'm going to share family data with you so you can see that. And you should be able to see it now. So I'm back in family data. So one of the things it told me I needed to do was close my deposit report. That's under general reports, accounting reports. I'm going to go to my deposit report. Normally I probably want to finish up this deposit so it was a complete deposit with all the payments I really wanted in it before I do the conversion. So let's say I've done that. I've probably clicked Start and printed it out. I'm just going to close it now. Do I sure I want to close it? Yes, I am. It also told me I needed to close the transaction report. This is a report a lot of people didn't use, but it's like your audit trail of the exact order everything happened in. And so you do need to close that as well. You can print it out if you want to. I'm just going to click Close. Yes, I want to close that. So those are two of the four things. I need to close my deposit, letter K, and I need to close my transaction, letter L. Okay, let's exit that. It also told me that one of my credit descriptions, agency credit, was missing an account number. So to get to that, I'm going to go to Functions, Program Configuration, Family Accounting Setup, and I'm going to go to, it's probably under Other, it's probably under Credit Descriptions. Let's take a look. And what I'm looking for is anything that doesn't have a GL number. You'll see that here's one agency credit, doesn't have a GL number. So I'm just going to have that credit back against tuition charges, $4,000. Type that in, click Exit. Exit. Okay, so I've got three things done. The last one had to do with an employee who didn't have a appropriate work department. So I'm going to exit out of Family Data. I'm going to go to Employee Data, and I'm going to switch my view so you can see Employee Data. And you should be able to see that now. So now I'm in Employee Data, and I happen to have written down her name, or maybe I printed that out, but her name was Amy Collins. So I'm going to go to letter C, pick Amy Collins. Okay, she's now selected, and I'm going to go edit her screen. And in the lower left, you'll see she was like a floater who worked in various rooms, various departments. And so I had, in version 9, had her assigned to all departments. Well, I can deal with that in 10 with scheduling. I can schedule her in multiple rooms and so on, but she still needs to have a main department in order to convert over. So I'm going to say that she most often works in the toddler room. I'm going to set her to toddlers. Exit. Now I believe I've covered all four things that I need to cover to convert. So I'm going to exit out of here. I am back to the main screen of Procare. Let me share that with you. So we're back to Procare. I'm going to sign out again. Now I'm also assuming that I've already made a backup. It would have probably been a good idea to make a backup. I'm going to sign out again. I'm going to Help, and I'm going to say download Procare support file. And something I'll mention as I'm doing this again, version 9 and version 10 can coexist on the same computer. So when you convert data, it doesn't remove anything from 9. 9 is still there. So you can still go look things up in 9 if you need to. So I'm going to type in the download file, which was CV10. I'll click Start. It tells me download's complete. I say OK to that. And now I'm going to switch my screen so you can see the conversion screen again. And you should be able to see that. Make sure I have location 1 selected. I need to come back here to the 3 dots and say where do I want to export that. I want to put it on my desktop or some other folder, wherever you want to put it. And I'll click Start. And now it takes a little longer. You'll see it's doing more. You got a percentage bar going. And when it reaches the end, now it says Procare version 9 data export complete. It took all of 3 seconds. Of course, I don't have a lot of data in here. And so good. So now I've got my export file sitting on my desktop. In fact, here's the name of the file. It tells me the location. It's called the name of my school, Little Road Schoolhouse 1, the city it's in, and then at the end it says .v10. So that's how I'll know that's a file I can import to v10. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and exit that. And now I'm going to share with you Procare version 10. And we are now in version 10. So I've got all those basic things set up in version 10. Now there's one other thing. I should be able to see that screen, but it doesn't look like in my preview. Maybe you're not seeing that. There you go. Okay. In version 10, I'm just trying to make sure you're seeing the right screen. We should be looking at the main screen. In version 10, I've set up all those things that I need to have set up prior to importing data from version 9. One last thing, though. I haven't got any real data in here yet, right? Okay. I haven't set up any Procare users, configured anything, and there's no reason to do that because those configuration settings are going to convert, things like classrooms and whatnot. So there's no reason spending a lot of time setting that up in version 10 ahead of time. But I basically have a clean database in 10 right now. I've got all the basic things set up to be ready to import, but I haven't actually entered any data. It would be a really good idea for me to make a backup right now. And I'm assuming that I've got this installed on my local network. If I have data hosting, then we manage your backups, and then there wouldn't be anything for you to back up. But the idea here is, let's say that you want to convert now, see what happens, practice a little bit in version 10, but you're not quite ready to go live with it, okay? And maybe in another week you're going to say, okay, I've looked at it, I feel comfortable with how to get around in it, now I'm ready to go live in v10. Well, then what you could do is restore your backup that has nothing in it, except those basic settings, and then you could import again, okay? That way you can kind of start over. Now I will caution you that that's only effective really if you either only have one location or if you're converting all your locations at the same time. When you back up and restore in version 10, it backs up and restores the entire database, all the locations. So you don't want to convert one location, work on it live, convert a second location for practice, and then try to go back. You really won't be able to go back. But just keep that in mind. So to make a backup, I'd go to the Utilities menu at the top. I'd choose Backup, Database Backup Restore. At the Backup Restore screen, I'm going to click Backup. It tells me the last time I did it. Yes, I'm sure I want to. I get a little percentage bar on the screen, and pretty quickly it will make my backup. And it will now tell me the backup's complete. Would I like to copy it offline? What that means is, do I want to make a copy of this backup somewhere else on a different folder, or maybe like on a thumb drive? That would really be a good idea. So if I had a thumb drive in the computer right now, I would say yes, and I would browse to that, and it would copy the backup to that location. Since I'm just doing this as a demo so you can see how it works, I'm just going to say no. But usually I'd say yes, browse to your thumb drive, and save the backup there. Okay, so I have a backup done. I'm going to go ahead and exit. Now I'm ready to import my data from version 9. So to do that, I'm going to go to Supervisor Utilities and choose Data Import Export. Again, this will be covered in your instructions. And then I'm going to choose to import my data. And it'll tell me, basically this is telling me I shouldn't have anybody else in Procare while I'm doing this. Technically I can, but it really slows down the import process, particularly if you're on a big network. So get everybody out of Procare for the time it takes to do this. It will make the conversion work much more smoothly. So I'm going to say OK. And so even if you have multiple locations and you're all sharing the same version 10 database, get everybody on all locations out just during this import. And now I'm going to pick the file I want to import, open file. I'm going to browse to my desktop. And I will choose Little Red Schoolhouse. There it is, has the .v10 extension on it. I'm going to say open. And so there's the file. And then I need to pick which location I want to import this to. Because just because it was in location 1 in version 9, I don't have to, I could have my locations organized differently in version 10. I might want it to go here. I'm going to pick location 1. But just so you know, you can import things. In fact, if you wanted to, you could combine multiple databases from 9 into version 10 by importing them all into the same location in version 10. Anyway, I'm going to pick this one. I want to go to version from school 1 basically to school 1, which would probably be the most common way of doing it. I'm going to click next. And that's going to ask me which modules I want to import. It puts a check by everything that it's ready to import. Okay, you'll notice Tuition Express is not marked. That's because I didn't put in my Tuition Express account number. Also, in version 9, I didn't have any Tuition Express data to convert. Okay, so that's okay in this case, but if you really were trying to convert Tuition Express and you got to this point, you might go, oh yeah, I need to go set up my account number. Another thing is, if for some reason you don't want to convert something, and I'm just going to give as an example, let's say that with agency accounting, you would like to start over with that and just do enter some beginning balances, essentially. You may choose not to import agency accounting if you wanted to. You could say, no, you know what, I'm not going to do that. If you choose not to import something, you're going to get a little alert, and down at the bottom, in order to keep going, you'd have to type the words I accept, just to make it clear that you know, yeah, I'm purposely doing this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and import it. So I'm going to check it off. I'm going to import everything. I'm going to click next. And I happen to have the food program in version 9, which is called Meal Tracker in version 10. And so it's asking me to map my meals. What I used to call B for breakfast in version 9, what am I calling that in version 10? Well, that's BR for breakfast in version 10. What am I calling my morning snack? I'm calling it AM snack. What am I calling my afternoon snack? Calling it PM snack. And you know what? I didn't have an evening snack. I'm not even open in the evening. So I'm going to leave that one blank. I'll click next. All right, next, I also had agency accounting in version 9, and so it's asking me, do I want to create brand new agencies with these names in version 10, or do I want to make this agency become a different name? Like I might want to say Department of Human Resources. Well, that's really the state agency. So in version 10, I'd like to have that go to the one called state. And Jackson County Outreach, that was a county agency. I want to have that go to the one called county. So it doesn't matter. You can map them to an agency name that's in V10, or you can say create new, and it'll create the same name you had before. I'm going to go ahead and say I want to call them state and county. I'll click next. And now I'm ready to start importing. Now this is going to go pretty quickly on my machine. I have a fairly minimal amount of data. It can take quite a while depending on your network connection and how much data you are importing. So as data import successful, I'm going to say OK. And great. And I'm back at the import screen. I'm just going to go ahead and exit. And now it's going to tell me that I need to run repair. So I'll just say yes. And that will just kind of bring that data up to the current version format for V10. All right, so now I'm just going to say everything's okay. Now I want to cover a few of the kind of key things about the conversion process and what you do next, okay? So I've got it converted, but I have a little work to do. And I want to point out some key configuration things that you'll want to look at. So we don't necessarily have to do these things all right at the start, but you just at least be aware of them. So I'm going to go to Configuration, System. And one thing I want you to be aware of is under Locations and Users, if we look at the Procare users, these are the people who are allowed to log in and do things in Procare. I'm going to double click on that. Mary Anderson is an employee of mine. She's a teacher. Everybody converts as a system supervisor because the way the group limits worked in version 9 is a bit different from 10. It wasn't a way we could easily bring that over. So they all convert as system supervisors. So that's probably not what you want. This would mean essentially Mary could log in and do anything. So one of the first things you may want to do is come in here and assign the appropriate user group. By default, there are several different ones. Let's say Mary Anderson, we want to have at the teacher user group. And maybe Dottie Richards here, maybe she wants to be at the assistant director user group. And I don't know, Betty Smith, maybe she's at the director user group. And I'm at the moment still signing in as the administrator, although I will want to set myself up as a user. And we cover a lot of these things. I'm going to go into more detail on these in other webinars. There is a Introduction to Family Data and Accounting webinar. I would highly advise you take that, where we talk more about users and user limits. So definitely sign up for the other webinars. You'll get even more information about specific things than you're getting today. So I'm just going to change some of those user groups. I'll say save and exit. And now that I've done that, I've got, the other thing is if I wanted to change what those people could do, I could go to the user groups section right here, double click, and I can say teacher, I could go to the limits and I can check off the things I want to prevent that person from doing. Again, this is covered more in the family data webinar. Okay, so we talked about the system supervisor thing. Also, I want to talk about classrooms. I'm going to click collapse here, so that we're just looking at the main categories. Classrooms are part of data management, and they happen to be under scheduling because they're so closely related to scheduling. And in version 9, basically you had a screen where you just typed in your classrooms. It's a little different in version 10. You have more capabilities, and you start out, we have 3 levels: classroom, work area, and department. You always start with the top level departments. We'll double click here. This is something you didn't have an equivalent of in version 9, so this is new. So you're going to have overall departments, usually things like infants, toddlers, administration, maybe even transportation and food service, depending on what kind of staff you have. Within these departments, you'll be able to have multiple rooms or areas assigned. Okay, so start with the overall department. Then we'll take a look at work areas. Let me double click here. So work areas are the places people work, things that will be classrooms, as well as things like the kitchen or the front office, places people work that are not necessarily classrooms. You'll see that I had some that were pre-set up here in version 10 already, and then I've got some other ones that are kind of like duplicated, things that came into my import. I've got a couple of different infants ones, a couple of different wobblers ones, and I'll be able to clean those up. There is a merge utility that I can use to clean this up and basically say all these infants ones point to the same infants room, so I don't have 3 or 4 different things called infants. The other thing I could do, in a lot of cases I could just delete a room if I wasn't using it. For example, let's say that I don't use the toddlers room at all. If for some reason I didn't do that program, I could just come in here and delete it. If it's not in use, it will let me delete it. Or I can use the merge utility to combine things that have similar names into a single thing. And I see that I did get a question here from Rachel. If we were practicing in v10 before we do the conversion and added fake families, can we delete those without problems before making a backup for v10? Well, ideally you would make the backup before you entered any fake families, because that way you could restore to a totally clean point without anything in it at all. If you didn't do that, there are a couple of possibilities. Probably the cleanest way would be to uninstall v10 and reinstall v10. Now you'd have a completely blank database to start out with again. Another option would be maybe to make those families inactive or hidden. Hidden is really the word we use in version 10. And it really depends on what you did with the fake families. If all you did was enter their name and address, that type of thing, you can delete them. But if you actually post ledger card entries or time card entries, those would have to be purged out before you could delete the family. So it's doable, but you might find that it might just be easier to mark them hidden. And so I'll try to talk about that when we get into that point. So here are the work areas. I'm going to add one more in here. Let's just to show you how that works. Let me say I wanted to add a new work area called Green Turtles. And maybe that's part of my infants department, so I'm going to assign that also to infants. Click Save and Exit. And then classrooms, I pick from my list of work areas. So I'm going to go to classrooms by double-clicking. I can't type any new classrooms in here. What I can do is click on this list and it shows me all the work areas that I previously set up. So I pick the ones that are work areas. There's green turtles, that's a classroom. If I want to, I could put in a ratio and the maximum number of kids I might have in that room. I should have in that room at any time. So I'm going to save and exit. So the main thing I want to point out here is that you don't just go directly to classrooms. Start out with departments, then create the work areas, and from your list of work areas, pick the ones that actually are classrooms. Okay, and we'll talk more about that in the webinar on the introduction to family data and accounting. Okay, last thing while I'm in the configuration, actually I got a couple more things I want to talk about in here. There's immunization setup. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but the names of the immunizations do convert. So if I go to my global child immunizations and I double click, my name's converted over, but the schedule of when they're due does not. So let's just take varicella for example. If I double click on that, so I would want to come in here and I would want to choose when this was due. So I would say like maybe the first one is due say at 12 months of age, click save, and then there's another one due 36 months later, and so forth. And that you'll find in the user guide. We'll talk a bit about how to set that up, the getting started guide. You can also on any of these given screens click the question mark, which will take you to Procare support, to an article related to the screen that you're on. So I'm not going to go into detail about how to do that, but more that I want you to know to come into immunizations, and this is where you would set up when things are due, what the schedule of the due dates is. Okay. Charge and credit descriptions. I want to look at that. I'm going to click, scroll up here to accounting management, and we're going to go to family accounting, and I want to take a look at charge and credit descriptions. We'll double click here. So these are all the different categories you can use to charge fees to families, and again we'll see things that are duplicated. Here we have tuition infant. That's a default category in version 10 automatically. Here's a converted category, tuition dash infant. I can tell it's converted because in this case it is assigned to an account number with an AO1 on the end. Anything, if every time you see the AO1 or AO2 or something like that, that's going to tell you that is a converted category. So, and I could delete some of these if I don't use them. If they are not locked, I could just select them and choose delete. Or I can use the merge utility to combine them together, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. So I could combine this infants with that infants, so they're basically the same thing, and then I don't have duplicates in here. So just something to be aware of, especially if you're converting multiple locations and each one had tuition infant, tuition infants, and so on. You can end up with several things that are very similar. Okay, so let's go ahead and exit out of that. And all right. I'm just looking through my little list here of things that I want to make sure I cover. Let me exit out of that. Okay, so let's take a quick look at that configuration merge utility. So let's say I want to clean up some of that information. I can go to Supervisor Utilities and choose Configuration Merge. Now I do have to be signed in as a system supervisor to do this, Configuration Merge. And I get my different categories, so I can combine things together in here. I can go to Scheduling and I can combine classrooms that are listed here, or I could go to say charge descriptions. Let me just do this one as an example. Charge descriptions, tuition charges. I'll double click, and so here's the concept. Look at, I've got tuition infant and tuition infant. I don't want them both. I really like the way I had it named here, so I'm going to say that I want this to be my main one, and I'll say that's my primary, so tuition dash infant, and then I want to merge into it this other one that doesn't have the dash in it, tuition infant. I'm going to add that to the merge list over here. And there could be cases where you want to merge multiple things into this category. You know, maybe you don't have, I don't know, maybe you don't use wobblers anymore and you want wobblers to be merged in with infants. So you could add that to the list and say I want anything that used to be infant or dash wobblers to go into this one category called infant. It's going to combine them all together, so all those postings will now be pointed to tuition dash infant. I'll click process. Am I sure I want to do that? Yes. So now I'll see that I don't have tuition infant anymore as an item. Everything was merged into this one. So this can be a great utility, especially if you're converting multiple locations, to kind of clean things up afterwards. Okay, so we'll go ahead and exit out of there. And now we want to get into what I think is probably the best part, which is family data and accounting. So let's hop into family data and accounting. I'm clicking that tab at the top to get in here. You'll see that I've got all my families converted. There's the Adams family. There's Mary Anderson, who's my employee, who also has a child here. And then I want to look at the Thomas family. You'll notice, if you remember in version 9, I had Kathy Thomas was the sponsor, and her husband, Fred Thomas, was the co-sponsor. Well, they now have 2 separate accounts, so I can track the amount they owe separately, and they're both assigned to the same children, Chrissy and Nicholas, and if I go here, Chrissy and Nicholas, and these children are recognized as one and the same. So if I change the information for a kid on one account, if I look at the other account, the kid's information will also change because it's going to track that as a single person tied to 2 different accounts. Okay, so that's good for that. Getting around things. On the left, instead of having an alphabet screen at the top like you did in version 9, you can look up families alphabetically. Right now they're sorted in alphabetical order by the key. If I click the word heading key, I get reverse alphabetical order. If I click the heading key again, I get standard alpha order. If I click the balance heading, I get them sorted by the amount owed. Click it again, has the person owing me the most at the top of the list. I can even hide that if I want to by right-clicking and uncheck the show account balances if I don't want people to see that. And then when I'm just working privately with my door closed, I might want to see that again. I can right-click and say show account balances. You can look up accounts by clicking in this key filter box and just typing in a couple of letters. Like if I type in B, I see only the B accounts. Type in a second letter like U, I see only the one account that starts with BU. And if I backspace that out, I get all the B accounts again. Backspace it out, I get the full list. There's also a way of filtering. This was what was called the select button in version 9. It was the button that had the yellow text when you only had certain things selected. In version 10 it looks more like a funnel. It's called the select filter. And right now I've got it set to show me only accounts who are visible. Visible would be equivalent to what we called in version 9 active. Okay, so active accounts are now visible accounts. A deactive account would now be a hidden account. So I can choose to show just hidden or just visible or all accounts. I'm going to pick all, say exit, and when I do that, this turns red because now I've made a particular filter. It's kind of like the yellow text on the select button in version 9. And I have one new account showing on the screen whose name and balance are in italic letters. That italics indicate that they are normally a hidden account. Up at the top you'll see their name again in italics, or their account key at least, and the light bulb is switched off. So those 2 things indicate to me that that's a hidden account. So if I want to get back to my standard filtering, just showing my visible accounts, I can go to my default filter by clicking this one, and that family now goes away. I'm just looking at visible accounts. You can also use that filter to look up things based on children in a certain classroom and other things as well, which we cover more in the family data webinar. Okay, so there are some things I need to set up in version 10 now that I have converted. 2 of those key things are going to be emergency contact and pickup people and billing boxes. So for a child, let me go to a family that has more than one child. I'm going to go to the Adams family here. So they have 2 children. I'm going to go and set up all the emergency contacts and people who are authorized to pick this child up. I can do that by clicking on this button here called Information and Relationships. I should point out all these buttons are related to the child who's highlighted. All these buttons at the top are related to the account as a whole. So I'm down here. I'm going to click on the Relationships button. And you'll see it already has Gomez and Morticia, the parents listed, although it doesn't know how they're related. So I would just indicate that Gomez is the dad, Morticia is the mom. Child lives with both of them. They're both contact people. They're both pickup people. Also, this is the place I assign the primary classroom. That's something that does convert. And if I have the meal tracker, I can assign the reimbursement level for food program. Now, let's say that I have other emergency contact people. Let's say the grandmother. Well, that information doesn't convert from 9 because in 9 it was just a big old text box. You could type in anything you wanted. It was pretty much impossible to know if something was a name or a phone number or an address, or if you put 3 different people's names in the box. Here everybody's set up as their own unique and individual person. So I can come to this Add button down at the bottom, and any button that has a drop-down arrow, I'm going to recommend you click the drop-down arrow so you get more detail. But I'm going to go to the drop-down area. I'm going to add a brand new person, the grandmother, who is not yet in the database anywhere. I've never added her. New person, last name Adams. Let's say her name's Dorothy. And you could put in this other information if you want to. To add her address, you'd click the new button. To add her phone number, you'd click the new button. I'm just going to click continue. And Dorothy Adams has now been added to this child, and I will indicate that she is the grandmother. And she's an emergency contact and a pickup person. By checking the pickup box, that's going to allow this person eventually to be able to check kids in and out, which I'll cover here just a bit more in a moment. So I'm going to save it for that child. I do need to go to every child in the family one time and make sure I've got these things set up appropriately. So if mom, dad, and grandmother are also pickup people for the sibling, I'll set that up as well. So I could exit the screen, and I could go then to Wednesday Adams screen and click this button for her. That would work. But I've also got these arrows, which are a shortcut. I can just arrow to the right, and it takes me to the next child, Wednesday Adams. And now I can just mark off, oh yeah, Gomez is the dad, Morticia is the mom, lives with, emergency contact, pickup. Oh, and I want to add the grandmother. But here's the thing. I do not want to add the grandmother as a new person. She's not two different people. I want to add her as an existing person because she's already in the database. Now I can just look her up. I don't need to add all of her phone number and address and all that again. I'll click Add Existing Person. I get a search screen. Her last name starts with AD, and she is an adult. So only adults whose last name starts with those letters. Click Find. There are 3 possible matches, but there's Dorothy. That's the one I'm thinking of. Click Select. She's now added to this child's account. Indicates she's the grandmother, emergency contact, and pickup. So I do need to do that once for each child in the family, just initially to get all those pickup people set up. Okay, so as long as I'm on the pickup people topic, I am going to talk about if you're going to have these people check children in and out at a computer or time clock device, you'll want to have them checked off as a pickup. And once you've done that, you can then double-click on their name, like Dorothy, and you'll get their person information screen. And now, because they're marked as a pickup, they have a few new buttons here that weren't here before. One of them is a new register. This is what's used to generate a temporary registration number that Dorothy could then take to the check-in computer to get herself registered to check the kids in. So that means, for example, maybe she'll be registering her fingerprint so she can check in with fingerprint, or maybe you're going to set it up so she has a personal ID number plus a password that she would pick to check the kids in. But in either case, you're going to click on New Register, and it will generate a temporary registration number that will be displayed on the screen. You can print it out, and that's the number she'll use to start getting herself registered for checking in. Let me go ahead and exit that. And you could individually go to any of these people like Morticia, and you could individually create a new register number just for that one person. Now you may be registering a bunch of people at once. Let me exit out of here. If you're doing that, if you want to create registration numbers for everybody in the database, or for everybody who's marked as a pickup person, you can go to the Functions menu at the top, Attendance Tracker, and you could say Temporary Registration, and this will create a temporary registration number for everybody who doesn't already have one. And then you can print a report and say, yes, Mrs. Smith, your temporary number is this, Mr. Jones, your temporary number is that, and then you can get everybody registered. Okay, so I'm going to say, yes, I want to create them, and then it tells me where to go to get that report. So I'll say, okay. Okay, so that's the basic gist of that. I do want to cover billing boxes. I know we're just about on the hour, and this is the first time we've actually done the conversion webinar, so we may go a little bit over an hour. If you can stay with me, great. If you can't, you can go ahead and type in your questions, and I can try to follow up with you later on via email if we need to. Okay, anyhow, so we've got the Emergency Contact Center. The next key thing is that we really need to set up the billing box. This is done one time for each child in the family, so I'm going to go to Pugsley, and I am going to go to the billing box button with the money bag here to set up the recurring fees for this child. Remember, this is one of those key things that does not convert because the billing is now tied to the child. In the upper left, I'll pick when I want this fee to apply. Standard billing means it's going to charge it all the time regardless of schedule. And in version 9, that's the only option you had. In version 10, you can choose to tie billing to a particular scheduled period. So, and we cover this more in the Family Data webinar, but you could have a child with like a school year schedule and a summer schedule or different semester schedules if you're on a college campus or something like that. And you could actually set up billing rates that would only be effective during those particular date ranges. I'm going to do it just for all standard billing regardless of the schedule. And I'm going to set it up for to charge Gomez Adams, the primary payer, once a week, and I'm just going to, I don't remember what age group Pugsley's in, I'm just going to put something in here. Comment might be 5 days, and then this would normally default to my standard amount if I had set one up. Let's say I've got that. I'll click Save. I've got Pugsley set up. I need to go to his sister Wednesday and do the same thing, so I can exit here. I can go to Wednesday's information and click on the green billing box button for Wednesday. That's fine. Or, since they're in the same family, I can use these arrow left and right buttons, and it takes me to Wednesday Adams. I could then set her up. Let's say she's also weekly. Maybe she's school age, possibly 5 days as well. Her amount, let's say that's 110. And maybe, I'm going to hit Enter on my keyboard, maybe I want to also put in a family discount for the older child. Weekly, tab over to description, F for family discount. Comment of, say, 10%. That will automatically take 10% off. And I'll click Save, and now I've got that set up. So I don't need to put in the amount. It's automatically going to take 10% off the line directly above it. We'll exit. So you'll need to go one time and set up that billing box for every child. Then you're ready to do automated billing. That's something that works similarly but much better in version 10. So I'm going to briefly show you that. To get to automated billing, you go to Functions, Family Accounting, Automated billing procedures. I'm going to just pick contract billing today. That means a weekly or monthly cycle. Of course, you can also do billing methods if you were doing that in version 9. And then we'll select all children enrolled as of a particular day. Let's say I'm billing for the first week of March, so I only want to bill you if you were actually enrolled as of March 7th. I want it to be posted on everybody's account also on March 7th. And I want to mark off the cycles that I want to process. So I'm going to do weekly. And if I wanted to, I could do monthly at the same time. Okay? And I'm going to click Next. And when I do that, I get a list of all the kids who are available to be billed. I would have all the kids and all the families listed here. I just have set up the one family, so that's all I'm seeing right now. I can check everything off at once. I can uncheck something if I don't want to charge it. I can type over an amount if I want to. And then I can click Post. Yes, I want to do that. And just like that, it charged all those families. I'm going to click the back button, though, so you can see something here. Notice how I have this item listed now. I posted a automatic billing on dated 3/7. If I needed to, I can double-click on that and open it up and see what it was, who I billed. I could even void that whole batch if I made a mistake. It would void everything in the batch, not just one item. But those are a couple of nice features that weren't in version 9. So let me go ahead and exit that. So now the Adams family has that. Other things that are good for you to know, we talked about running automatic billing. Would be good to talk about briefly about payments. So how do you record a payment? If you want to do it one family at a time for a particular family, you can double-click either on the balance or go to the account ledger. Again, we cover this in more detail in the Family Data webinar. But let's say I want to post a payment. I can click on this drop-down list, hit P until my payment categories come up, payment by check, put in the check number, confirm the amount. Maybe they only paid me $500. Click Post and Exit, and it will have been recorded to their account. There we go. Okay, and so that's easy enough to record payment, very similar to the way it was in 9. The other thing that you'll need to know related to payments are deposit reports. They work in a similar way to version 9, somewhat, but they're not under reports. They're under functions. They're under family accounting, and you would go to deposit reports, and you'll see I have a bunch of my deposits, all the ones from version 9 converted over. I can say View Current. These will show the pending payments that are available for me to add to my next bank deposit. Now I've only got one in there because that's all I posted, but I could, I might have 20 different things in here and I may not be depositing them all at once, so I can just check off the ones I'm depositing, At the bottom, I pick the bank account it's going to go to. Tap Tab or Enter just to make sure the amounts match. Everything matches. I can put in a comment if I want to, my comment. And what day did I take that to the bank? Click Close Report, and there it is. And I can even double-click on it to review it, and in most cases I can even make a change to it if I needed to. So there's a deposit report. Okay, you can even attach receipts, like a PDF version of the receipt, by going here and attaching your receipt to the deposit as well if you wanted to. Let's go ahead and exit out of there. Okay, I know there's a lot of things I'm trying to cover today, so Rachel had the one question. If you have questions, feel free to type those in. I've got a couple other things I want to touch on here. And we talked about billing, we talked about payments, we talked about registration. Okay, I think the other thing I want to touch briefly on agency accounting and briefly on employees, and then I think we'll open it up to your questions. So agencies do work differently in version 10. They actually work much better, but it is different. So you'll notice in your materials list today, one of the items in there, two of the items are related to agencies. One is talking about your conversion strategy. Do you want to convert agencies, or do you want to kind of start over from scratch? Either way is fine. And one of the other ones is about the differences between 9 and 10 as far as agencies go. And I'd really advise you to look over those two articles because you want to have a general understanding of how it works before you get into that. So let me take a brief look. I have a couple of families set up here as agency accounts. I'm going to put them back in alphabetical order so I can find them. Combs is one of those families. If I go to the ledger, by default I'm on the family ledger, the primary account ledger. But just similar to version 9, I have a separate ledger here for the state, or for the agency. And you'll notice that a lot of these items are locked. With version 10, when I get a payment from the agency, I do not apply payments on the agency ledger. I've got a separate screen to go to for that now. I just want to show you the agency ledger for a moment. Every time I pay something off, I'm going to apply it to a particular fee from a particular date. So when I get a check from the state, I can say, oh yeah, they're paying for March, or they're paying for February, or maybe they're paying for January. And then I'll know the things they still haven't paid me for yet. There was no way to do that in version 9. So you'll notice here that on this screen I have two items that don't yet have a lock on them. They have not had any payments or credits applied to them, and they're back from January. So I know, hey, the state has not paid me yet for the January items on this family. So let's go just take a look at how that would work. So I don't post payments on the agency ledger. I'm going to exit the agency ledger, and I'm going to show you where I do go. I go to Functions, Agency Accounting, Agency Payment Posting. And then I pick the agency I want to work on. Let's say I just got a check from the state. And I'm going to say View Current. This is similar to the way deposit reports work. It's going to show me all the pending transactions, things that the agency still owes me for. And then I can say, oh, Megan Combs and Chris Combs. Amount due is right here. And if the amount the agency is paying me is the same as the amount due, I can just double-click in the due box and it inserts the payment amount automatically, or I can type in there. I can double-click. But let's say they're only paying me $300 on Chris. They didn't pay me the full amount. I'm sure, oftentimes agencies pay a slightly different amount than what you initially anticipate. So what do I do with that? They owe me $325. They only paid me $300. I can adjust it. So I'm going to put in a $25 adjustment, and I could just say that that is an agency credit because the agency didn't agree to pay it. Or maybe my policy is that, hey, if the agency doesn't pay, it goes to the parent. So I'm going to do a parent transfer and have that amount go to the parent. I would probably fill out all these other items for any other families who are listed on my voucher from that agency, but just for an example, I'm going to do the one family right now. The amount of the total payment is $880, so my check from the state should say $880. I need to type that in up here. This amount needs to match this amount. And then I put in probably my voucher number up here, voucher 1234. And I could save this and come back to it later if I wasn't yet done, but once I'm ready, I'm going to post it. I can't undo this later, although I could come back and make a correcting adjustment if I need to. I'm going to say post. And when I do that, now I have voucher 1234 posted. Let's go take a look at what happened to the agency ledger. So I'm back at the Combs family, back in the ledger, back to state, and you'll see now that those two entries from January are now locked. They've had something applied to them, And down at the bottom now, the date that happened was on 3/10, payment by agency, voucher 1234 for $880, which at the moment left them with a $25 balance. And then on the very next line, here's my adjustment. I transferred 25 over to the parent, so the agency balance at the moment happens to be 0. Let's look at the parent ledger. You'll see the very last item now automatically now is a transfer from the agency for 25 bucks, and now that raised the amount the parent owes me. So that's a brief overview of how agency accounting works in V10. Last thing I want to touch on is employee data. Let me take a quick look here. We're going to click on the employee data module at the top. Most all the key things about employees convert. A couple of things I want to point out. One is that their date of hire, or if they left, their termination date, those things are now tracked in a place called work history. So, and everybody who is working there right now should have a status of currently employed, and that's going to be the date that they were originally hired that would have converted over from version 9. So work history screen. To assign the place people usually work, you'll go to the information button right here, and you can assign the school that's their normal location. So if they work in multiple locations, you can pick their normal school, and then you pick the work area they normally work in. So that's going to be part of the conversion, but you could assign a different main work area to them. Okay. Here's the new register button if you needed to for an employee. If you want them to be able to check in and check out, they can do the new register right there. We'll exit out of that. And the other thing I want to point out, pay rate, I want to point that out. It's the stacked money right here. This is where you put in the pay code that they work at and their straight time and overtime pay rates. We'll exit out of there. And an important thing, if you're doing payroll, this is one thing, although the withholdings convert, like if you set up like employee child care or health insurance or something like that, the withholding formulas convert. However, the assignments that you have applied to the employees don't. So I need to go to Mary Anderson's withholding screen here with the capital dome. She has no withholding set up for her yet. I would click autofill. Autofill, if I have nothing in here, this button is available to put in the normal federal and state income taxes. Now, once I've done that, autofill goes away. Then if I have other things like employee child care that I want to apply here, I can go to new withhold, pick a category, usually general. General means things you've set up, not normal federal and state taxes. And here I've got one set up for C-care, which means child care or employee child care. Click load. Load will load any variables that are set up for that. In this case, it's the amount to withhold. For child care, I'll put 50 in there. Click save and exit. And now I've got all the withholding set up for this person. I'll exit there. Another thing I want to point out is that this is a new feature in 10. I'm not going to go into it today. There is a separate webinar on the payroll module. But reimbursements, you can now add out-of-pocket expense reimbursements to checks. So if somebody picked up $20 worth of supplies at the grocery store or snacks or the hardware store or whatever, that can be added onto their check now as a reimbursement. Okay. So that pretty much covers it. We didn't talk about duplicate people. That's probably one last thing that I would like to touch on. Mary Anderson is an employee. She's also a parent. She's also a user of Procare. So she converted as 3 people. The one I would really like to keep as the main person is the Mary Anderson, who is the employee, because I have all my time card history and everything with her. So I'm going to double click on her name just to take a look at how I've got it set up. Here's where I have an identification number for her, and I'm just going to temporarily at the end of that, I'm going to add the phrase keep on the end of it, just so I know this is the one I want to keep, and I want to get rid of any of the other duplicates of her. This is the best information I have on her. So I'm going to say save and exit. And now there is a utility under the utilities menu at the top called remove duplicate people. This is something you want to be a little careful of because you don't really want to remove people who you wish you had meant to keep. So it wouldn't hurt to make a backup before doing something like this. But we're going to go to remove duplicate people. And you'll notice that I get an alphabetical list here. And I can just type in, if I want to, the first few letters like A and D. And it's going to bring up anybody who has A and D in their name in first or last. And so here I see 3 Mary Andersons. Notice one of them has an actual date of birth and an ID number with the word keep in it. That way I can tell that's the one that I want to be the main person. So I'm going to say that's Mary Anderson. I'm going to add as my primary person. And these other two Mary Andersons really are the same person. So I'm going to say they're a duplicate. That one's also a duplicate. And then I should be able to merge those all together, and now I'll just have one Mary Anderson tracked as a single person throughout the system, so she can now check in with one ID code, check herself in, check her children in, and so on. And I'm going to click process, and now I just have one Mary Anderson, the one I wanted to keep. So I'll go ahead and exit. Okay. So that's basically everything I wanted to touch on today. I see Sue has a question, and I'm going to go ahead and start taking those questions now. Thank you very much.